2026. What's February the 14th? Oh, yeah, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, guys. Obviously, I don't swing that way, so I'm not saying it in that way. Pause. But yeah, I hope you're having a good day. Today's a Saturday as well, so I hope you're having a good weekend. Hope you've had a smashing week, whatever you've been doing. Yeah, as you can see from the title, don't confuse morality with normality. Now, I'm going to give myself a bit of a pat on the back because I think this is a bang of a title. And I was really trying to figure out a nice, punchy way to title this topic because I've actually been mulling over it today, especially as I've been preparing for my upcoming immersion with my client or my clients. And, I thought to myself, that, there's so much fear around code approach, around the space itself. Is it right? Is it normal? Is it acceptable behavior? Will people be receptive to it? Will the girls be receptive to it? Will the public be receptive to it? What would my friends and family think? What would my coworkers think? I mean, we all have these deep hidden fears that prevent us from going in for approaches, or prevent us from owning the approach, or prevent us from expressing our true desires, whether they're romantic and sexual and all this stuff, right? And there's shame attached to that. And I'm speaking from experience, right? Somebody who's had to unwind certain beliefs, let go of certain beliefs, and also reprogram myself, right? And so I figured it's worth me spending more time thinking about these beliefs, ideas around morality, because I think that is a hidden force that is preventing many guys from either going in for their first approaches or just finding success, right? And this is something that I won't go into too much detail because then I'll be giving you all the source, because I have certain techniques that I'm going to be using with my clients to help them get over this. But I'll give you enough. I'll give you what you need in terms of the right framework and perspective, and then you can, do what you need to do to really view everything through a different lens. For those of you who are deeper thinkers and more inclined to think about the more psychological, moral aspect of this whole game, because I think it's important. Anywho, quickly, my name's Ian. If you don't know who I am, 29 years old. I've got a dating channel now. Although I don't really want to call it a dating channel, although I guess it is that. But more so like trying to just get guys to free themselves of bullshit, dating apps, social circle, all this stuff, nightclubs, bars. Yeah, for the guys who are introverted, who used to be like me and couldn't find, you know, sufficient options when it came to dating. Guys who are logical, guys who still have everything else on paper in terms of career, success, social life, hobbies, interests, but for some reason their dating life was lagging or is lagging, then I'm the guy for you. That's why I made the channel. I was inspired by Cold Approach. It completely transformed my life in so many ways, not just getting dates and getting laid and having romantic options, but it made me so much more confident, so much more assertive, so much more direct. And I accredit a lot of that personal growth in the last year and a half to Cold Approach, to Daytime Cold Approach. And so I just want to give that gift back to the people, to the boys, to those of you who want to, transform your dating life as well. So link in the description if you want to work with me one to one. And that can be in person, which is more expensive, or virtual, which is the cheaper option, but still fruitful and valuable. And yeah, pretty much it. So, plug done. Let's get into the topic. So, don't confuse morality with normality. So, this is so important, right? And this is why language is important, words are important. Was it Socrates who said the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms? I think it was Socrates. If not, correct me if I'm wrong. But by the way, before I continue, drop a like, boys. It'll be appreciated. I can see one already. But yeah, the point is, morality and normality. So what do I mean by that, right? So it's very easy to walk around and think that certain behaviors are wrong, right? So when we think about morality, right, moral questions are essentially a question of, is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? And what is that based on? Well, you could argue that there is some level of intuition, right? So most of us agree that murdering innocent people is wrong. Most of us would agree with that, right? Apart from the crazy serial killers. And even those people, they're mentally handicapped. They've got some sort of, the issue in their brain that's clearly a lot, reduces any sort of moral compass, right? But aside from those extreme cases, most of us have some sort of intuitive idea of what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. It's that same duality: good, evil, right, wrong, etc. Now, whilst there is an intuitive sense to this for certain things like murder, right, or abusing people, right, so violence, although again, you could argue that in some places the line is a bit blurry, right? So, for example, I was recently watching a guy on YouTube. He's like trying to save the Amazon rainforest. I think his name is Paul Rizzoli, and he was on the Diary of the CEO podcast, and he was really interesting, right? He's trying to save the rainforests in the Amazon, and he gave an anecdotal story about how he and his team came across a tribe, an uncontacted tribe, and these are people that are basically living like hunter gatherers. And he made the point that they don't necessarily live by the same moral principles that we do, right? So to them, it's okay to be violent towards people that you don't know, even if the threat isn't really a threat. So they will, he made a point, or he told a story about how they shot an arrow into his friend, even though the day before that same friend had given this tribe like bananas, and they were friendly. But then the next day, they I guess they perceived him as a threat, so they shot some arrow and almost killed him, right? And so, without going on a tangent, the point I'm trying to make is that in some cases, like even things like violence, an uncontacted tribe that has to survive in the jungle might have a completely different moral compass or moral interpretation of when violence is okay, compared to somebody who grew up in the West, right, in the modern day, because they're stuck in a different time. So even then, it is very different, right, in extreme cases. But putting that aside, in in the realm of, let's say, the modern day Western world, we all have these different moral beliefs, right? What is right, what is wrong, is it, and so these beliefs, where do they come from, right? Now, I'll speak for myself. A lot of these beliefs come from religion, right? So I grew up in a fairly religious household, and I was used to going to church and reading the Bible. And whilst now in my older age, I don't have a problem necessarily with religion or the Bible or any type of text, right? Because as I've said on previous live streams, I actually think there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from reading those pieces of, literature or spiritual text, right? But at the same time, if you're like me, when you've grown up in that environment, certain ideas, certain beliefs, and certain principles are taught to you at a young age, right? And of course, when you're young, you don't really have a choice as to, what you're going to take seriously or what you're going to internalize, because you're young and your mind is forming its own beliefs, but it's very sensitive. So when you couple that with the fact that these are, moral figures of authority, religious people, preachers, and then your parents as well, yeah, you're more than likely to adopt those beliefs, and those beliefs form your moral compass, right? And all of this is reinforced by the people you're around. So you go to church, you meet other people who go to church, your family goes to church, your parents have a religious belief, and this permeates throughout your society, right? Even your family, friends, even the school you go to, right? So I also went to a school where we used to go to chapel every Sunday. And again, I'm not shitting on religion, okay? I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but the point is, that's just one example of how morality is pushed onto us, right? Through certain principles. Like, for example, in the Bible, it says, you know, don't steal, don't kill, adultery is bad, all this and that, right? The commandments, etc. Um, and so, that's just the religious aspect. But then you also have the societal one, right? And so I think, you know, our teachers, for example, right? Our teachers will tell us, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And when they tell us that as the moral authority, because they're adults and we're kids, we take that as fact, right? That moral principle that's being pushed onto us by that authority figure, it has a lot of weight, right? Why does it have a lot of weight? Because these are older people, right? We look up to them, right? And so there's some level of credibility there. But that credibility, when you're younger, it hasn't been scrutinized. You only get to scrutinize that credibility or the merits of that moral belief when you get older, once you have that ability to think for yourself, when you're a critical thinker, right? When you can actually use your experience, use your wisdom, and use your front or forward thinking brain to determine if what this belief says is actually one, correct, or two, does it apply to my life? And three, is it as sort of foolproof as I think it is, or as it was packaged to be when it was sold to me, right? And again, like let's think about this, right? These moral beliefs, they are rooted in early years, childhood, and they continue all the way through to your older age, right? Because they're always reinforced by, again, media, the people you hang out with, whether it's in school or when you get older into university, right? There's also moral beliefs about work, about how to make money, about all these different aspects of our life, daily lives, right? And so the funny thing is that when it's when it's sold to you, right, or when these beliefs, these moral concepts are given to you, they are given to you under the guise of right or wrong. And here's the funny thing, right? Because as you get older, you realize, okay, so I was told that this way of life is right and this way of life is wrong. But do we ever sit down and think why? Like, why is it right or why is it wrong? And what makes something right and what makes something wrong? Like, what's the basis of that? Because it's not enough to just be like, it's right because I said so, right? It's not enough for the preacher to say it's right because I said so, because the Bible says so. It's not right for your parents to say it's right because I said so, because I'm your parent, right? I mean, again, they're allowed to do that, but as an adult, if you're somebody who sees yourself as a self aware, critical person with agency and free will, and you're smart, then wouldn't you want to scrutinize all these beliefs if they're clearly dictating how you behave and how you see the world, which directly impacts your mood, the way that you show up. So we never question these beliefs, right? And so when you begin to question these beliefs, you realize, wait a minute. So I was told that this is right or this is wrong, but in reality, what makes something right? So I think nowadays, as adults, so I'm 29, I just turned 29 a few days ago, it is my responsibility to develop my own moral compass so that I can make decisions based on what I believe is right and wrong, right? And that is for every individual human being as an adult to decide using their critical thinking skills, right? So it's my responsibility now to think, okay, I have these desires. Instead of passing it through the filter of what other people told me is right and wrong, I'm going to pass it through my own filter of what I think is right and wrong based on my experiences and based on my own morality, right? And so I'm going to speak for myself right now. So I was thinking about this earlier this morning. I mean, I was just writing an essay about it and I thought, well, what is my moral compass, right? Because I see myself as a good person. I don't see myself as someone who's trying to manipulate people, abuse people, hurt people, take advantage of people. So I see myself as someone with pure intentions, and especially when it comes to cold approach and dating, what am I really doing here? I want to meet girls who I like. I want to go on dates, have fun, form fun romantic relationships that both of us, me and the girl, experience, right? I'm going out, for example, tonight I'm going out for dinner with the girl I'm seeing in London, right? Like, I approached her. What were my intentions? My intentions were what I'm doing right now, right? My intention was to set up dates, meet somebody who I like, who then likes me back, and then we can share this romantic experience together for however long it lasts. And now we're gonna go for dinner, have a good time. She's gonna come back. We're gonna have a good night. We're gonna talk. We're gonna catch up, and then she'll go back home, and then we'll move on, and things will continue, right? So I'm thinking, is there anything morally wrong with that? Like, am I causing pain and suffering? Am I taking advantage of someone? Am I causing stress? No, all the intentions are pure, right? They're good. But think about it, right? Some people will say cold approach is bad. Some people will say it's creepy. Some people will say it's this. Some people will say it's that, right? And to be fair, other people will say the opposite. Some people will celebrate it. Obviously, if you're somebody watching my type of content or any type of content in the space, you're probably somebody who already is convinced that it's a good thing. It's a good skill to develop. But some people might not, right? And those people who don't agree, again, I can't speak for them. And again, this is not an attack on them because they just have beliefs that I probably once had, right? They just haven't maybe broken out of that daze, or they haven't really thought about this thoroughly, as I have just done for the last 4 hours in my apartment, right? That just gives you an indication, guys, as to how much I think about this stuff because I think it's important. I think it's so important, right? But again, like those people or those beliefs, like it's just like you're not supposed to like take them to heart, right? Like they're just beliefs that they've developed based on their experiences and based on the same information that they were fed. So is it really as legitimate as it was made out to be when it was given to us by those authority figures or by the media or by society? And then also you start to realize that there's a lot of hypocrisy, right? So, so for example, some people might look at my content and go, you know, oh, like, why are you talking about these topics? Or maybe, talking about sex online is bad and this, right? But then at the same time, people watch shows like Love Island or Geordie Shore, or they read into celebrity sex gossip and they watch these shows where all this stuff is paraded and celebrated. They listen to music where, rappers are talking about popping pussy and doing all this, and that's all celebrated. That's given awards, right? And again, like, not to make this like into like a political thing. Like, again, like, people can do what they want, right? But there is a little bit of hypocrisy in people who become the moral police, because those same moral police, they celebrate other areas that are literally the same thing, right? It's the same energy. It's just a different context, but it's celebrated here, but then demonized here. Why is that? Again, I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and be the guy who's gonna like do the whole Matrix red pill, people puppets, yada yada yada. That's not me, right? Like that's not the purpose of this channel. But it should at least get you thinking about instances where people are trying to make you feel a certain way or denounce you using the moral argument or using some sort of moral whip. But that whip, it's hypocritical, right? And then the next point I want to make about this is, once you've understood that, one, people are hypocritical when it comes to morals, right? And they apply them in one instance but don't in another. Once you've come to terms with that, and once you've done your own internal, let's say, critique on whether or not these morals are valid, and especially in the cases where your own desires seem to conflict with the morality that you've been given, because that's tough, right? If there's a conflict between your desires, meaning I want to go and approach this girl, or I want to be more open and direct about my romantic desires or sexual desires, but then at the same time there's this moral barrier that is, essentially you're pushing against, then that makes this whole process difficult. And it's important to, in those instances, really take a step back and think for yourself. Think, okay, like, why do I think this is wrong? Do I think this is wrong because I actually think it's inherently wrong, or do I think it's wrong because somebody told me it's wrong? And why did they tell me it's wrong? And if they told me it's wrong, does it conflict with stuff that they seem to have no issues with? Go through this process of evaluation, and you'll come out the other side completely stumped and shocked because you realize that you were kind of living in this moral daze, right? This moral facade of fugazi, right? Or fugazi. Was it fugazi or fugazi? That kind of reminds me of that scene from Wolf of Wall Street. Fugazi, fugazi. Woo, woo, woo. Shout out to Matthew McConaughey. Um, but yeah, so once you've done that, then now this is where the normality part comes, right? Because I said in the title, don't confuse morality with normality. So what do I mean by that link, right? So what I've come to find through thinking about this issue is that a lot of the time we misattribute morality we misattribute normality for morality, meaning because most people act in a certain way, we think that because that's the norm, right? Given that a lot of people do it in a certain way, we think that the norm must mean that it's right, which means that if it's the abnormal, that must mean that it's wrong, right? And but the reality is that we mistake that as moral, like a moral issue, rather than just the abnormal versus normal issue. Does that make sense? I really hope I'm making sense here. So I'll give you an example, right? So a lot of guys are afraid of coming across as creepy when they approach, or they think cold approach is you know uh, discouraged behavior. Again, I don't know why people would think that, but I get, actually, you know what? I get why people think that, because they've seen a video or two here of people saying that, right? But I actually think one of the reasons why people think that cold approach is, let's say, weird, is because when you look at somebody doing a cold approach, they're actually probably the only person who's doing an approach in that vicinity, like the entire day, right? Like, think about how many people approach, right? Like, when I go out and approach, typically I rarely ever see anybody else doing it. I've probably only seen it like twice or three times. And I've done this almost 1,000 times. So the reason I make that point is because it seems, let's say, weird. And when you think something is weird, I think at some level there is some sort of moral component to it where you think that it's weird and therefore it's maybe wrong. And when we start talking about wrong, that's when we get into morals, right? But there's a misconception here. This is an issue because in reality, it's not that it's wrong. It's just that it's rare, right? It's just that nobody else is doing it, and so it seems odd because it's rare. And so it's when it's rare, that means that it isn't normal. But we have mistakenly believed that because it's abnormal, that must mean that somehow it's morally wrong or morally incorrect, right? But we're making that mistake by attributing it as a moral issue rather than just a normal versus abnormal issue, right? And that's such an important distinction because ultimately, this entire process isn't normal, but that doesn't make it wrong, right? And this exists at so many different levels. And I found that out when I was going through my essay. And I can't go through all the details because I would be sat here for an hour and a half and I need to get ready for this dinner. But the point is, we are mistaking um, abnormality for immorality, right? And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. Um, and again, like people, I think people have this knee jerk reaction when they see something odd that most people don't do. But in reality, it's not inherently bad. It's just the fact that most people don't do it. But we're so conditioned to do what everybody else does. We're so conditioned to fit into the herd, to fit into the normal way of doing stuff, right? The normal way of conducting yourself in public. Think about it. Everybody on the streets just walking, walking, walking. They've got their families, they've got their shopping bags. Everyone's going in one direction or another. And then you've got this one guy who's like walking and he sees a girl and he's like, oh, she's cute. And then he turns around and goes and approaches her. Yeah, like on camera, from a third person perspective, you look at that guy and go, huh, that was weird. That was odd. And again, most people will just stop there, right? Like, I don't want to keep on banging this drum that, everybody thinks that it's weird or everybody thinks it's bad. I don't think that. I don't actually think that everybody has an issue with it. Most people are just neutral because most people are too busy thinking about themselves, so they don't really give a fuck. But point is, in those instances where you feel like that's the case, because again, why are people on the internet commenting this, right? People are saying it's creepy, people are saying it's weird. Again, like, that comes from somewhere, right? Which means that we need to deal with it, because look, the subconscious mind is so powerful, guys. The moment that you guys go on YouTube and you watch some code approach content, and you either see someone leave a comment that says code approach is wrong, somebody got arrested for this and that in Scotland. I saw some comment the other day on my video. I was like, what's this guy talking about? I didn't even respond to it. The guy was like, oh, it was outlawed in this country. Brother, what are you talking about? Who cares? Like, oh, the one instance where probably some guy doing some really poor approach and that guy probably was being aggressive or abusive or did it in a very creepy way. Yeah, that guy got arrested for it. So does that mean that everybody else who's in this space isn't meant to do it? Are you ridiculous? Are you crazy? Come on, guys. Like, let's be real, right? And I get it. Like, but what I'm saying is, guys like that will leave a comment. You'll see that comment, and believe it or not, it will go into the back of your mind somewhere. And when you go out to approach, you will, at some subconscious level, that will be milling in the back of your mind, and it will hurt the conviction of your approach. It will hurt how direct you are. It will hurt how loud you are. It will hurt how honest you are. And all of that will combine to reduce the quality of your approach. Trust me, brother, it will. So, as a result, it's important to be very careful with what you're looking at online. The same goes for a street interview. You might get a street interview where they put a compilation of girls who say, "No, don't approach me. It's creepy. It's this and that." But brother, I've already been on these live streams so many times talking about how so many girls have told me to keep on doing what I'm doing. So many people have said, "Oh wow, this is so courageous." Obviously, I've got results and I've gotten dates from this. So many dates, right? I'm going on a date today. Today, Valentine's Day. So, who's right here? Who's morally right? Right? Should I follow the masses because apparently, supposedly, the masses have the right answer here? If I followed the masses and didn't do what I was, doing, so if I followed the masses or followed the herd or followed the general moral compass, where would I be right now? You know what's funny? This time last year, February, Valentine's Day, I was in Amsterdam and I did a few approaches here and there. And I approached the girl and we hung out for the day, but then we weren't able to meet up in the evening. And I spent the night alone, right? I went out, did a bit of sightseeing, but ultimately I wasn't able to get that date finalized for the evening, even though me and the girl spent some time together. She was great, by the way. She was like half German, half Costa Rican. She was really cool. Um, but and ultimately I spent the night alone, right? That was a year ago today. A year ago today. Now, imagine if at that point I went, you know what? I feel like morally this isn't good because of what people say or what because of society says or my family or my friends might think. Where would I be today? I would probably still be alone and not have had all these great experiences, not have met all these wonderful women and had these all experiences and dates and flings and such a fun time and meeting guys in the space and linking up with Ephraim and meeting Christian and all these great experiences. Now being a part of a community, coaching guys now, helping guys through this delicate area of life. Like, think about how much has happened. Think about how much has changed, right? And if I'd followed that mainstream perspective, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of getting like hyped up and passionate about this, because please, like, we need to really think for ourselves for once, let go of all that other conditioning. Let go of it, right? Because it all starts here. Everything is here. Don't be deceived by the illusion of what you see outside in the third world, in the three-dimensional realm. Yes, I'm getting woo woo. Yes, exactly, because it's true. It's true. And I think one of the reasons why people don't find success with this skill is because they haven't done the inner work. They haven't really thought things through, right? They're just banging their heads against the wall. But work needs to be done. You need to lay the foundations properly if you want to find proper success, sustainable success. And I've gone through this journey. It's taken me, think about it, it's taken me this long to really think about this moral issue this deeply. I'm a year and a half into the journey. And sure, I've got reps, I've got experience, I've got numbers on the board, I've had wins, lots of wins. But I mean, think about how many more wins I could get, right? And so I'm gonna, help the guys who I'm helping. I'm gonna help them through this process of deconditioning through action, but also through just some inner work, right? So yeah, to end the stream, don't confuse morality with normality, right? Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right, and just because it's normal, it doesn't mean that you should follow that advice, right? Do what you want to do using your moral compass, and I believe that most people have a good moral compass, right? Like, boys, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get dates. There's nothing wrong with wanting to approach a girl you like on the street. There's nothing wrong with giving her a compliment. There's nothing wrong with being a sexual guy. There's nothing wrong with, in a respectful way, obviously, right? Not in a creepy, aggressive, pushy way when it's just somebody you met. Obviously not, right? Let's use common sense. But yeah, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah? So, and I'm giving you permission. I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you need an extra voice to say it, here, it's here. I'm saying it. It's not wrong. Yeah? It's not wrong. And the moment you start thinking like this for yourself, that is freedom. That is freedom. That is liberation. All right, boys, I'm going to go take a shower, get ready for this date. And yeah, man, if what I'm saying resonates with you, then, and you've either been putting yourself out there trying to approach, but you're hitting a roadblock, reach out to me, man. Reach out to me. I'm here to help. Invest in yourself if you're capable. Again, if you're not, it's fine. I'm not here for everyone. I'm not here to force anyone to do anything. I'm just here for the guys who want to level up. And if that's you, then yeah, shoot your, I was going to say shoot your shot. Shoot a message. Don't shoot a shot at me. I'm not that kind of guy. Shoot a message, book a call, and we'll see if you're a good fit. And we can get to work. Especially now that spring and summer's coming around. We're at the back end of winter now. So come on, boys. We want to be ready for the summer, right? But yeah, either way, I was very passionate in this live stream, which to me shows that I've really made some progress with this particular topic. And of course, I still have some work to do. I'm not a finished product, even though I've gotten results. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. So take care, boys. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.